Dear students, welcome to week 3 of Intro to Race, Gender, and Sexuality Studies. My name is Itzel Corona Aguilar, and I'm the instructor for this course, as you know. I wanted to create this very brief video to just kind of give a check-in about the course and a few notes on some of the readings we've been engaging with. I have also sent out a doodle poll for students to fill out to provide feedback on the course. Any recommendations, changes, things that you'd like to suggest we change or add, please feel free to use that survey for that purpose. And if you don't get a chance to submit that survey, you can also send it to me via email. But the benefits of the survey is that it is anonymous and your peers are also not able to see your submission. So whatever input you want to provide, please feel free to do so. The other thing that I wanted to say is I posted an update that I have graded all of your first introductory and week 2 responses. I'm going to be providing further feedback on ways that I am understanding your analysis of the readings, some feedback that I can provide for you. But if students are specifically interested in finding more information about materials, questions that they may have, please feel free to reach out to me via email. The other thing that I also posted is I will be providing extra credit opportunities in case students are interested. You, let's say, miss an assignment, aren't able to complete it, something happens. Please feel free to submit an extra credit that will take place for the missing assignment that you were unable to complete. I am being very flexible this semester with students, given everything that is going on in terms of remote teaching and learning, and that we are living through a pandemic. So if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. I'm going to go ahead and just jump right into the lecture and this week. So by now you should see that the first week was just kind of giving you a warm-up, introducing yourself. Second week is when we really got into the sort of quick introduction of where gender studies, the field started from, where feminist or this concept of feminism or fighting for women's rights, and I'm saying that in quotes, it was initiated. And what many of you discussed greatly in your post is that we're learning that a lot of the origins of feminist social justice movements were really predicated on racist, white supremacist ideologies about white women's superiority and in a more general sense, just white supremacy. But for this week, we're really just taking a dive into what we mean by a critical radical feminism. You should have read the reading by Bonnie Mann that discusses what radical feminism is, what is the difference between radical feminism and critical radical feminism. Now, a lot of these sort of different terms and theories that we're going to engage with can be, some will be very centric in academic jargon and knowledge, others will I'm sorry, I think I had a break in my internet connection, unfortunately, but I'm going to continue. So as I said, for now, this is kind of a reading that you should have engaged with. And then for the waves of feminism, this is just a very sort of quick overview on what we typically discuss when we talk about the waves of feminism. The first wave really refers to the women's suffrage movement, sort of the Declaration of Sentiments, which we engage with through Sojourner Truth's piece. The second wave refers to the sort of 1960s and 70s. where we're kind of sort of starting to engage with now. The third is intersectionality. We'll engage with some of Kimberly Crenshaw's work, look at the origins of her analysis through Combahee River Collective statement. And these waves are just for you to know as information that is typically taught. We will learn throughout the course whether these are useful, helpful, and please feel free to let me know your thoughts about this. Okay, so the next slide, the next few slides are pertaining to this week's reading. What I want you to really get out of the conversation with Lord and Bonnie Mann is that when we're talking about gender, any kind of gender analysis, in the 60s and 80s and beyond, prior to that, and continues to happen now, we get a constant conversation happening between gender and race. And a lot of times students take this class with the assumption that we will be breaking down each category throughout the semester, but as you've learned very quickly that we are engaging with all categories at the same time and the ways in which they intersect. So that was just the remnants of the last three, the last few slides for the week 3 session that I had already provided to you earlier on in the semester. The last point for that slide really starts up and picks up here with this PowerPoint that I want you to really focus on these few slides. When we're talking about the I'm sorry, I apologize once again. I had a break in my internet connection. But what I really want you to get out of this lecture for this week is the race war theory really is discussing the way that the sort of Western, egocentric, monolithic form of theorizing comes from, and how that differs from sort of the type of theorizations that women of color, feminists, queer, and trans scholars continuously are challenging. And this is something that's going to come up a lot throughout the course. One of the key questions that I want you to consider is who creates theory, what is theory, who controls the production of theory, and what gets to be considered knowledge that is true and factual and canonized, that gets to be archived, and what knowledge is seen as emotional or as an elective or artistic or creative, but not valid enough to be considered a strong form of knowledge production. So for these slides that you're going to be reviewing, the key thing here is that the race war theory is really critiquing language that is constantly jargony, that's limiting. And here's the difference from like just saying, oh, I don't understand something, and I don't know what any of this means, to critiquing something that is engaging in like a white Eurocentric form of discussion. These two differ from one another because they're not necessarily the same thing. There is the act of translation that happens when, if you are not sure how to engage with some type of theory, we can learn how to translate that knowledge in a way that it speaks to the language that you have. But that differs from a white Eurocentric form of analysis that is inherently limited and racist in its form of engaging with whatever theory, analysis of race, etc. that might be producing. So this is very critical, and this is what Barbara Christian is critiquing here. She's critiquing a lot of academics who say we just rush to want to produce some type of new theory, but what is this theory really about? And her solution to all these critiques are that the race for theory needs to be rooted, that this process of having a race for theory is wrong, because theory should be rooted in praxis. And that word is used to describe how you're doing what you say. So how are you putting that work into practice? What is your theory and how does that go into practice in the everyday? So make sure to keep that in mind as you're reviewing all of the slides for this week. And keep in mind that bell hooks is also in conversation with um, Barbara Christian, right? They're both talking about theory as this form of liberatory practice, this way of theorizing about what we know to make sense of it, make meaning out of our lives. This is going to be a constant pattern throughout our class. These authors that we engage with, they write and produce this knowledge to make meaning out of the world that we exist. And in the times that we are living in and have always been living in, this form of knowledge production is incredibly useful for just thinking about what all of this means. I want you to note that a lot of the artwork throughout all of these lectures really comes from great artists and scholars that you should really look into if you are working on any side projects or inspiration. I really encourage you to look at the work of the presentations that I post. For example, Julio Salgado, as many of you have seen in the syllabus page, is an artist that I continuously reference. He's an undocumented queer artist that is just doing really amazing work, works with an organization called Critical Resistance and other organizations that I encourage all of you to research. The key point here is that theory is personal testimony. It happens every day, all the time, and it surrounds us everywhere. Theory is what happens to us and how we make meaning of those happenings. Let's say you were at a bus stop and you had an experience with somebody, a conversation. How you make sense of that experience, that's a form of theorizing. But we often think that theory is only produced by white men in power, or if it sounds cohesive and perfect. But there's all forms of theory, and I really want you to just think about that and sit with that throughout this course. Theory happens everywhere, on social media, at home, in our dreams. It is everywhere. It's on Twitter, it's everywhere. I'm sure many of you have seen the work of No Name. I really encourage you to follow her. She's an amazing Black scholar who is constantly engaging with the current times we're living in. She's a cultural critic, so if you are on Twitter, I really encourage you to follow her work. This is definitely, No Name is a great example of theorizing the everyday. And it's not something, as Hook states, it is not easy to name our pain or to theorize from that location. But to do that work is incredibly brave. So I'm just very excited to have all of you this semester. Please send me your questions. Like I said, I'll be posting some of these brief updates throughout the semester, and let me know any other thoughts you have. Thank you.